Ladies and gentlemen, Ian Murray.
Those of you that were here yesterday will know that I have no concept of time. I'm going to try and do better today. I've got my mobile phone in my pocket with a timer on it, it will buzz. So here I am. I'm going to come back to this later. This is set notes. So I've been working basically in the industry for 25 years as a director of photography, and my main specialism is lighting. If I thought of one thing that I'd sort of say that I've improved over the last 25 years, it would be I'm better at lighting now than I was when I started. And today I want to talk to you guys about traditional filmmaking techniques and how it applies to content production. So the first job, I've got 3 jobs that I'm going to show you. Keep it nice and tight. The first one is TUI, which is like a Thompson rebranding commercial you might have seen. The second one is a company called Gymshark. Last year they're the fastest growing company in the UK, and the third job is going to be Models One, and it's a little production we did for Models One. So let's start with TUI. This is, as I say, traditional filmmaking techniques. So we had quite a big crew here. We're shooting in Turkey, and what I want to show you is basically you'll see that all of the images basically have this sort of certain time of day. It's kind of like a kind of sunset time of day. And of course, when you're shooting a production, you're not shooting just at sunset. You're shooting throughout the day. And this is like a 2-day production. So I'm going to go back through the shots now and show you what we did to try and get this to all kind of fit together. Because one of the roles of a cinematographer is to try and, as I mentioned yesterday, to try and have a consistency of images. So you want your images to sort of flow. So what we do is we select. It's all about preparation. So we prepare as much as we can. We have storyboards that we work to, and we sort of plan our shots out. We have a recce, a location recce. We go along there. We sort of work our frames out. We work out what the path of the sun is, and we try and plan it so the wide shots are shot at the best part of the day, and then the close-up shots, or the shots that are inside, we can light with big film lights, and we match those big film lights to look like sunset. So if I go back to the beginning again, you'll see that, so that's a film light lighting that. That's obviously a film light again. And then we're into like a location exterior where we're using natural lights. Again, natural lights. That was shot slightly earlier. And what we try and do, this one was like a film set where we had half an aeroplane and film lights again. Another interior. And you can see we kind of try and sort of blend it all together so it feels like one kind of part, one time of day and one story. And then we ended up on like a dance scene that's clearly lit with film lights. So that's quite a big production, and we had like a full film crew, and you usually use quite big lights with big generators. And really what I want to talk to you about today is how, as I've progressed in my career, I use less and less equipment, and the techniques that I'm using now can really apply to any filmmaker, because we use very small precision lights. And most of you guys are, aspiring filmmakers or filmmakers will have maybe limited budgets that you're working to. And these cinematic techniques that I'm going to share with you now can be applied to your content production. So let's move on to Gymshark. Now, I built a studio for these guys because they wanted to have control of their own content. So I got introduced to them as a lighting consultant. And I was showing them basically how to create their own content. So that was a combination of building a studio and also training their staff to use the lights that they bought for this studio. And then in the throes of doing that, going through that process, we said, look, why don't we just make a film for you as well? And so we ended up making this film incidentally, they basically, all of their marketing is done on social media. So it's the first company I work for where it's purely social media marketing, nothing else. So the film we made for them that hasn't actually been finished yet, this is like a sneak preview, it's just going to be released on Instagram. So here we go, Gymshark. This is the video to play, guys. So you play this. So that's like a cable camera flying up in the air, and you can see the shot above it produces. That's like an Alexa Mini and some lenses on there. And then there's another video to play here. This is another camera we use. It's the Phantom Onyx. And it shoots at 12,000 frames a second, so you can see the results it produces above. We got her to jump off that about 25 times. Yeah, she was in bed for a couple of days after that. So these are the ungraded shots. So we used, for the main unit, we used the new Sony Venice camera, which is incredibly sensitive to light. So it's like a native 12, I think it's 2,500 ISO or something. So the lights that I usually use, I was using them down to like 7% of their capacity to 3% of their capacity. So you can see the sort of theme now is like, rather than using these big, really powerful lights, because of the technology drive and the more sensitive sensors coming out, we can use less and less light. So these are, as I say, ungraded images straight out of the Sony Venice, and I'll show you a few images here. They're all quite dark and moody. It's like the idea is to get into the psychology of a boxer and her preparation for a fight, and to understand the sort of the demons she has to kind of bring up inside her to prepare herself for combat. It's like kind of we use the horror sort of genre as a kind of as a sort of reference. And these are some shots. She's like prowling around in dark hallways. And this is her journey to the ring. And then here we go. And this is the slow motion stuff you saw earlier. And then here's some behind the scenes of that. So as I say, we shot with this high-speed Onyx camera, and this thing here is called a bolt arm, and it's a motion control arm that is super high-speed motion control arm, which is used for high-speed cameras. And it's a very frightening piece of equipment. In fact, they bolted it to the ground, and when the guys first showed us the move, it ripped the bolts out of the ground. So, yeah, God help us when the robots take over. That's all I can say. So there's a bolt there again. This is the big main hall we were working in. You can see it's a sort of cherry picker here. So we're rigging our lights on we've got a rigger to come in and produce this grid here to hang all the lights off. And you can see it's a massive space we're lighting here. And the main artist is lit with this little light here, which is a little dado DLED light, tiny little light. So again, you can see that even though we're creating like big vistas, we are still using like tiny little precision lights. And that's her there with the cable cam above her. Some more BTS here. We had a guy on a rickshaw as well doing some gimbal work. And now this is a system that I'm really excited about. It's something that we're developing at the moment. So I work with manufacturers like Kinoflow and Dado, and we're developing these new lighting systems, as I say, to reduce everything down. And this system here is called Lightstream. And what it basically does is it has a parallel beam light that reflects onto various reflectors. And it's a completely new way of lighting. I talk a lot about this in the set notes that I will refer back to later. So I like to break down lighting. As part of my job now, I see as sort of training people on how to light in a cinematic way. And so these new lighting techniques are really helping with that. So you can see some more light stream used here. That's someone adjusting one of the reflectors. So the next generation, we're going to have motorized reflectors. So we'll be able to set the lights up, and we'll be able to stand in a room with like an iPad and move the light around, which will be pretty fun. There we go, and that's me adjusting a little dado. That's one of the DLED lights again. Tiny little light, but we use it. 90% of my work now I use these little lights. It's incredible. And some monitor shots there. Right, so this is Models 1. Now the Models 1 campaign, well, it's kind of like, it was a passion project, and we didn't really have any money, and I shot it on a 5D camera and a 250-pound Sigma lens. Which is, so there's no money in the equipment at all. And we shot it with this precision lighting that I'm talking about. So this is what we try and do. This is I referenced a 1990s Prada campaign by a photographer called Glenn Lutchford. And he, in turn, referenced the 1980s Ridley Scott film Blade Runner, which Ridley, in turn, got from a book by Philip K. Dick called Do Android Dream of Electric Sheep, which Philip K. Dick, in turn, thought about what it is to be human and what it is to be android. So it has all these kind of cultural references, and basically it's a scene in the end of Blade Runner where, I don't know if you guys have seen the film, but it's amazing. If you haven't seen it, the first Blade Runner, in my opinion, is one of the best movies ever made. And there's a scene at the end where they're having this sort of battle on the top of a rooftop, and it's like a dystopian kind of vista with all these kind of like mixed lighting colors coming up and lighting these two characters. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to kind of try and produce this vista of light. And so we started off with these little precision lights here with tiny little gobos on that were producing different shapes of light, different color temperatures. And what I'm trying to do is build it up in layers to try and create kind of like a rich tapestry of light. And you'll see, this is our model here. We built a little set here. We had no money for this. I mean, we did this for like a few £100, right? And we got this model from Models One, and we got KinoFlow lights here and some of the little dados I was talking about here. And that's before we did a bit of Photoshop, and then this is after Photoshop. So you can see really the Photoshop didn't really change the light at all. We just took the lights out. So what's particularly satisfying about this is the lighting, the shape of the light, the structure of the light was all done in camera. Much like the Gymshark, everything you saw there, everything was in camera. There's no post effects at all. There's no grading, in fact. So to be able to light well is to be able to kind of eliminate that whole post process and just basically do it for real, you know, which I believe has a lot more soul to it than if you're trying to create your kind of look in post effects. So I'll show you some other shots we did. This is some close-ups of her. So what I like to do is I like to set up a kind of like a lighting environment and then explore that lighting environment, you know. So you sort of set something up you think is going to create kind of like a depth and a dimension, and then you pop your model in there and you start kind of moving around with a camera and seeing what you can find, right? And you move her a little bit out of the light, and then you move her back into the light. And it's like a kind of visual dance, you know. So we got quite a rich variety of shots out of this. I'll show you some of them. So you can see they're all very different, but all part of that world. This is like, again, showing like that precision light, a little bit of light, a tiny bit of a flare, and you got a different look. Here's using the actual flare of the light to create, and again, another atmosphere, a little puff of smoke, and then again, it's another look. That's one of my favorite shots. And this one here, she feels like she's an alien, you know? She feels like a replicant, you know, which is as I say, it's, the reference we're using was all about what it is to be human. And then what we did was we got her to move into this light here. We had a little bit of black wrap that we put some pinholes in and created our own little shape of light on the wall here. And then we just got her to move into that. We changed her wardrobe, and then we had another sequence of images. So really what we're doing is we're sort of playing with light. We're sort of setting something up. We've got a few ideas. We go in there. We've got some visual references we're working to. We set something up. We blag a model. We blag some free lights. We do it on a cheap camera. And, you know, the results are pretty good. That's actually referencing another scene in Blade Runner when she runs. I don't know if this is a scene where she runs through these glass windows when she's getting shot by one of the replicant catchers. So now I'm going to move on to music videos. This is, I like to refer to this to your generation actually, it's a DIY generation. I think kind of what happened in music in the 90s when people started kind of producing their own music out of their bedrooms, I think it's now happening with filmmaking. So as I say, I'm traditionally trained, and you know, I've been doing this for a long time. And what excites me now is this whole kind of movement of guys like yourselves just going out there with a camera and just thinking, you know what, there's nothing to stop me from doing this. And I totally love that spirit of filmmaking, and I think that's what it's really all about now. And what I'm trying to kind of share with you today is that there's techniques that we use that can be applied to what you do. And it's not about money, and it's not about having kind of like, you know, a lot of manpower or anything anymore. You can do these things quite simply. So with this music video, this is, again, a no-budget music video. We just sort of were, you know, blagging things from whoever we could. And we ended up in a friend of mine has a very small studio space, and he let us use this. It's not really a studio, it's more like a showroom. And we sort of turned it into a studio by putting some blacks down. And then we shot this music video for this guy, Ryan De La Cruz, who's like a grime artist in London. And it's just, again, you can see, oh, another video, please.
Kill him, kill him, man, jam, man, I'm up like Shaw. Never been afraid of the law. Don't say no more. Ain't man if it's bad, can't live life sad. It ain't wrong if you're trying to get it in any way that you can. Never had.
Yeah, so there you go. So it's basically, we didn't really have any ideas for the shoot. The track's called Psycho, and then we found a sheet of glass on the ground of this showroom, and we thought, you know what we'll do is we'll put this sheet of glass up, and you can see it here actually. There's a sheet of glass here, and we just shot through the sheet of glass to produce these like double images, which worked quite well for the theme, you know, sort of split personality type thing. So you can see we're sort of totally making it up as we go along, and we ended up with, I think, you know, some quite nice images, considering it wasn't properly planned and there was no money behind it. So there you go. And now this is another one. This is another video, this time for an artist called Jake Bug. Again, it was a very, very limited budget. And what we did this time is we wanted to, I have a mate of mine who has a company that has gimbals, so he brought a gimbal down. And this is a really good example of technology not working. So you've got the artist getting really pissed off here, and you've got two people trying to work out how to get the gimbal to work. And in the end, I just grabbed the camera and put it on an easy rig and just shot the whole thing on an easy rig and sacked off the whole gimbal guys. So that's really my point here, is you don't need complicated equipment. I mean, there's this whole movement in cinematography, you know, towards kind of really sophisticated gimbal work and, you know, all this kind of technology that a lot of it, the more experience you get, the more you strip things down. And it's about the spirit of what you're doing with the artist. It's like trying to get, you know, into the kind of essence, the energy of what's happening on a film set, and not to get sort of distracted by all the technology. It's very important. So what we did here is we had a laser, that we got this laser guy to come along and set up this kind of, this sort of channel of light with this laser. And then the idea was to track through the laser, and then we realized that we couldn't do that because it would have burnt the sensor of the camera. So then we ended up, oh, these are the finished results, but basically we ended up putting another light in the center here, another one of those little dado lights, and creating a second channel that we could track through. And then we got these little glass filters, and these glass filters we put in the middle of the lens. The tiny little like bits of broken glass that I've sort of assembled over the years. And you just put them in front of the lens and you can get these really beautiful effects. So again, this is all in camera. There's no post effect here at all. And you can see it's got kind of like, it's got a sort of, again, a just sort of weird dystopian quality to it. And so again, the strategy for me was to find the world, find the mise en scène, you know, find what's being offered up to the camera in terms of the look you're creating. And once you found something that's exciting and it's worth exploring, then you kind of explore it, you know. So we started a day not knowing that this is what we're going to end up with. We started a day thinking, well, we got a laser, we were using ultraviolet light as well to try and get that top to glow. The idea was to have ultraviolet light on the top, so he kind of glows. He has this kind of post-apocalyptic quality, right? So there you go, it's another image there. And we just put a little tiny bit of smoke, a puff of smoke in the background, and as the smoke emerged, it hit the lasers, and then it starts producing this really strange landscape behind him. So that's my timer. It works. Right, good. I've got 11 minutes left. Good, yeah, excellent. All right. So this, yeah, another example. I love it when it's really kind of messed up and you don't really know what's going on. It's like this visual puzzle, and you're kind of looking at an image and you're like, I feel drawn to it, but I don't know why. What's happening here? All you can really see is his trainers, and the rest is a mess, right? But I like it. So now here we go, back to more traditional work. This is a big Amazon Alexa campaign. And this is basically what we would traditionally use a full film crew and lots of big lights. And I decided that I was going to take a chance and just use small lights. So normally we use 18,000 watt lights, 18Ks we call them, and we have them on big cherry pickers, and we take them really far away from the location in the order to get a convincing sunlight through a window. Because what you want with sunlight is you want it to look like it's got parallel shadows, and you want it to have what's called a minimum fall off, which is, we can get technical about this, which I promised I won't do. So, but basically what you want is you want something that looks like sunlight. Anyway, so there's a new technique that we're using, and we're basically, do you want to play this?
Alexa, resume.
So as you can see, there's a shaft of light coming through the window there, and that was produced by a 1.2K light, a special light called a Lightstream PB70. And rather than an 18,000 watt light on the other side of the street on a cherry picker with a spark in it, on a radio with the gaffer standing next to me, shouting at him, going, lift a little bit, right a little bit, and then having the whole street shut down with street dispensation because you need to have a street shut down in order to fly a light across the street. Without any of that stuff at all, we just had a little 1.2K light outside the window here bouncing into a mirror, and that produced a more convincing shaft of sunlight than I have seen with that massive light. It kind of blew my mind. I was like, right, this is the future, guys. We don't need big lights anymore. And you can see the camera here is hanging on a bungee. I love the bungee. We just hang it off a lighting stand, and it means you can kind of move around with the camera. And again, it's like that kind of dance I was talking about earlier. So let's move on. So you can see this is the shot here, shaft of light. We actually had another light behind in this window, which is like twice the power, three times the power of the 1.2, and that didn't even produce a shaft of light. So you can see that there's something very special about this. You can see this on my Instagram. We explore this system quite comprehensively. So there you go, there's the shots of that. And then this is another clip to play. 8 minutes left, still doing all right.
Nobody, baby, but you are.
Hey, hey, hey. My, 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 my.
Nobody, baby, but you are me.
If the stars don't shine, if the moon won't rise.
So that was the PB70 was down there. I was showing it to a new gaffer, just explaining to him how wonderful I think it is and hoping that he'll take it up. And if I go on to the shots, you'll see these are the shots. So 90% of the lighting is through this window here. And this is, the artists love this, right? And the director loves this. Because now what we're doing is we're lighting through a window from the outside of the room, and we don't have all the paraphernalia that we normally have on a film set. So the artist can move freely around a room. The director can block the scene out without all of these bloody light stands everywhere, you know? So everyone's kind of really liking this. But the reason I use it is because it produces really naturalistic looking light. And it allows me to shape rooms with light. So it's like a flashback sequence. They're having a dance and they're flashing back to when they first met. And by forcing the light into the room, you're basically lighting her face by the light bouncing around in the room. It's a really very elegant, beautiful way of lighting, in my opinion. Okay, now, so here we go, set notes. This is what I was talking about earlier. This is when I break down the lighting. When I first came up as a DOP I graduated from film school in 95. I started shooting quite big high-end commercials in 2000. I was a total imposter. I was 25 years old, really didn't know what I was doing. I had a very experienced gaffer and experienced grip and focus puller to kind of get me through it, because it took me 10 years not to feel like an imposter on a film set, because, you know, it's like at that time, this information wasn't available. And I thought to myself recently, what would I like to know as a young filmmaker? I'd like to know how to light products, how to do hair and beauty, how to light a car, all these sort of specific kind of specialized lighting and cinematography techniques that no one tells you about. And the only way you can learn about them is by being on film sets and having done them, which is impossible because you'll never get the opportunity to do that. So I thought, right, let's break it down. So here you go. McDonald's burger, right? This is a Jamaican pack shop. And so what we do is we show the lighting. And you're looking at that and thinking, my God, just for that little burger? It's like, I have a driver that I use now, and he came on set for the first time and looked at our setup, and he comes up to me and whispers in my ear, what, 2 days to shoot a burger? Yeah, I mean, that's the reality. It takes time, and you have to, because we're shooting different stacks from around the world, we have to sort of have different lighting atmospheres set up for each burger. So you can see here that we have the light stream set up here. We have our tabletop set up. And then we break it down. You can see the camera we're using, or the lenses we're using. And then I just break down all the lighting techniques. And we use little bits of card to bounce lights around. We have the main sunlight coming from these reflectors. And this is all broken down. These are the lights we use. They're a lot smaller than what we used to use. And they all have these little parallel beams on. And then you can see some And then we end up with that, basically. And that's just a typical example with set notes and how we break it down. And we apply that to everything we do now. So every job, on part of the camera team will be a couple of trainees, and their role will be to go around taking photographs of what we're doing. So we'll work out a narrative on set notes, and we'll explain to people like a new little trick or something that we discovered on the shoot, or just basically breaking down how the lighting works. That's it. So look, I've got 5 minutes left, so I've got some questions. If anyone wants to ask some questions. Do we have any questions? I was saying, let's leave 5 minutes for questions. So that's pretty close, actually. 4 minutes, 45 seconds now. So has anyone got a question? Okay.
So when it comes to lighting for YouTube videos, i.e. let's say you're sitting in front of a camera and you're talking to the camera, what are some easy ways to light that to look a bit more pro?
Right, okay, good question. So basically, one of the seminars I'm going to release on YouTube is all about basically portrait lighting, and I believe portrait lighting is a cornerstone of cinematography, because when you're basically looking at a film, you're looking at a sequence of images of someone's face, right? So to understand portrait lighting, basically what you try and do, right, is get a friend of yours to hold an iPhone in front of you with the torch on, and then move that torch up and down around your face, right? And what you're looking for is you want to get the iPhone quite high up, and you want to get light into the eyes, but you don't want, you want to go as high as you can, because by having the light high up and it's in your eyes, you get this really nice triangulation of the cheekbones, right? So what we do a lot on beauty is we have a high key. It's called a high key. It's directly over the front of the camera. It's actually called something. It's called a paramount key, because it produces like a no shadow underneath, and the Paramount Pictures used it for years to light their film stars. So I would advise you to move the light around your face and to sort of work out what your perfect light is, you know? Some people that have maybe a big nose wouldn't want too much of a side light, and people with deep set eyes wouldn't want the light too high. And so you're basically analysing your own face and working out what your key is, you know? So all movie stars knew this. So if you have someone like Marlene Dietrich and she saw the key was in the wrong position, she'd say to the cameraman, you know, this is wrong. I know where my key should be, right? So as you know, like if you're performing in front of a camera, you should be aware of what your perfect light is. So it's like move that torch around, find out what your perfect light is, and then always make sure that's where you put it. Any more? I kind of am starting out in a way now, because one of the things that is a bit of a myth about being like a director of photography is you think that you're going to get to a point and everything's comfortable and you never have to worry about work. But let me tell you, you get successful, but nothing lasts, you know. You go through peaks and troughs of a career, and you're always trying to survive, you know. My battle now is trying to become relevant to you guys. You guys are basically the new world order, do you know what I mean? So I'm trying to find a way of becoming relevant, hence why I'm standing here today talking to you about it, do you know what I mean? So I would say, find something you're passionate about that you can specialize in, and you can do it for at least 10 years without getting bored. Because let me tell you, lighting, whatever you do in life, it's going to take a minimum of 10 years to really get good at. I spoke about this yesterday. Malcolm Gladwell, 10,000 hours, you know. It's the truth, man. So find something. It's like digging for oil, right? If you just dig a little hole, you're never going to hit oil. You've got to stay there, and you've got to keep digging until you hit that oil. So find something you can maintain an interest for a long period of time. Because I'm still passionate about this stuff, you know, and I've been doing it for 25 years, do you know what I mean? And the only reason that I've managed to stay relevant is because I still have a passion for it. So it's really about your heart and finding a passion for something and sticking with it, you know? Does that answer your question? Because it was, I don't get a feeling. So what would I do differently now? That was it, wasn't it? I'd concentrate more on lighting from the start. I'd really understand that the way to differentiate myself was to be specialist in something. So I'd find an area to specialize in and really focus on that and become the best at that over everyone else. Because the problem we've got is, like you well know, there's so much competition out there now. Everyone's doing this. The barriers to entry have disappeared now. When I started out, I was shooting on film. And film, no one trusted you on film unless you shot on film. So to get into that secret club was a real battle. But once you were in it, you felt safe, right? Because you thought, it's me and 20 other guys doing this, you know? And I had guaranteed work, you know, for what I thought was the rest of my career. And then digital came along, and the magician's cloth dropped, and everyone went, well, hang on a second. That monitor is actually what we're getting? It's like, yeah. No more kind of lying to them, going, no, you've got to trust me. You know, do you know what I mean? It's like, so, yes, specialize, find a passion, stick with it, and just go deep, deep, deep into it. Like, really think about it, live it, breathe it, try and understand it on a deeper level than everyone else around you, and just keep doing it. And I think that's the trick.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ian Murray.
Thanks a lot.
Really amazing stuff. Thank you so much.